Hi, I'm Charles Hatley of Melone Hatley Law, where we help people going through divorce protect their family, their finances, and their future. Today, we're going to be talking about the 5 biggest mistakes that we commonly see people make when going through the divorce process. Now, it's easy to understand that when going through divorce, you're going to make mistakes. It is a very emotional time, and most people haven't been through a divorce before. But there are some things that you can do to help protect yourself, starting at the very beginning. The first mistake that we commonly see is people wait too long to get a divorce. It is understandable wanting to wait and make sure that you're making the correct decision when ending your marriage. However, what we see is people understanding that their marriage is over and they continue to stay in the relationship. They continue to try to make the relationship work, and they're fighting the emotional toil of the relationship ending. What ends up happening is one of the parties will make a mistake. Either there will be domestic violence issues, there will be money issues, there will be issues with the children that could have been avoided if the parties had just moved towards divorce a little bit quicker. The courts are very susceptible to domestic violence charges. And what I mean by that is when you bring a domestic violence charge at the beginning of divorce, it can sway the whole outcome of the divorce. You can have a good person make a mistake, or even worse, a good person who is accused wrongly of making a mistake. And the court will grant a protective order, which will remove that person from the home, not allow that person to have any contact with their spouse. And if there's children, there could be no contact with the children for up to 2 years. The person removed from the home will have to continue to pay all the bills that they paid before and now support themselves in their separate lives. And since it can last for up to 2 years, it is very likely that they'll go through the entire divorce process having that protective order hanging over their head. So if there's a protective order saying that they can't be around the children, the court will allow that protective order to stand when it's making custody and visitation decisions. That is a big deal. And usually what we see is these protective orders come when people wait too long to file for the divorce process. The second mistake we see is not hiring an attorney quick enough. It is never fun to have to go to a divorce attorney and hire them to end your marriage. But what we frequently see is one party will hire an attorney. They will start planning. They will start making moves to help themselves come out of the divorce process the best way possible. And the other party will sit back and wait. They will think that their spouse, who they've loved for several years, is at least thinking about their best interests. But that frequently isn't true. When an attorney is involved, they are planning. They are deciding what to do to get what is in their client's best interest, and only what is in their client's best interest. So while you're sitting back waiting, your spouse is putting finances in place, putting facts in place, putting everything in place so that they come out the best way possible. Whereas if you hired an attorney quicker in the process, maybe you could have helped stop some of those processes. Maybe you could have helped mitigate some of the damage that's being done. One recent example that we had was somebody's spouse started selling homes out from under them. They had several rental homes and started selling homes out from under them. Had he hired an attorney just a little bit quicker, we probably could have stopped the sale of the home and protected some of the finances that were being dissipated by the other spouse. The third biggest mistake we see is moving out of the marital home. While divorce is stressful, and there is no doubt about that, and this runs somewhat contrary to my first piece of advice of waiting too long to file for divorce, you don't want to move out of the marital home too quickly. And the reason for that is once you move out, you leave your other spouse comfortable. You leave them in the marital home. If you were the one paying the bills, there's going to be a presumption that you continue to pay the bills in that marital home. And while you're trying to set up your separate life, you're still going to be paying all the bills on the marital home. And it's going to take away any reason that the other spouse has to negotiate with you when they're sitting very comfortably in the marital home. You want to stay there as long as possible, or until there's an agreement in place on what's going to happen once you move out. Attorneys can quickly drop agreements that says one spouse will pay for the bills of the place where they're living, the other spouse is going to pay for the bills of the place they're living. What this does is it creates a little pressure on both parties. So when it comes time to negotiate a settlement, if settlement is possible, when it comes time to negotiate that settlement, what we'll see is there will be a reason to negotiate on both sides. When one spouse moves out of the home quickly, but continues to pay the bill, what we see is the other spouse has no reason to negotiate. They're having all their bills paid. They're getting exactly what they want. They wanted a divorce, and now you're gone. And they're not having any negative repercussions from the divorce process. This is very important and can prolong your divorce indefinitely if the other spouse does not want to negotiate and is trying to drag their feet through the process. The other mistake we see people make is not separating finances. So you know you're going to go through a divorce. You start a divorce process. The next thing you want to do is start separating finances. You don't want to be in a position where one spouse can drain the family savings, or one spouse can drain the entire checking account. So now that bills are not getting paid or checks are bouncing, especially for mortgage, utilities, and things like that that must be paid each month. You want to make sure that your paycheck is going to a separate account that you control. It doesn't mean that you can cut the other spouse off financially, because if the other spouse relied on you financially, the court is going to have an expectation that you continue to support them in some way. But if you stay in the marital home together and you're still paying all the bills like you always have, and you decide to put your paycheck into a separate account, there will be no negative inference because you decided to put your paycheck into a separate account. You're still paying all the bills. You're still supporting the non-working spouse if that is the case. If the other spouse is working, then putting your paychecks into separate accounts is the best option. Cutting off access to savings accounts and making sure not to waste savings accounts is also the best option. Making sure that credit cards aren't opened with using your Social Security number is also a really good way to protect yourself. And the way that you do that is during this separation process. At the beginning, you pull your credit report. You see every outstanding credit card, every outstanding debt that you have. And you hold that because that's a picture in time at the beginning of your separation of what debts you had, of what credit cards you had, and what accounts were in your name. As you're getting towards the end of the divorce process, either negotiating a settlement or going to trial, what you'll want to do is pull your credit report again and compare the two. Are there accounts open that you did not realize are open? Are there debts now that are much larger that you did not contribute to? You want to know that information to make sure the court or the negotiation for the settlement agreement is accurate as to what debt should be paid at that time. The other mistake we see is trying too hard to avoid litigation. What we see frequently is people coming in and saying, I don't want to go to trial. The last thing I want to do is go to trial. Throughout the divorce process, it is very common for both sides to make settlement offers. Generally, the first settlement offer you get is not very good. Generally, sometimes it is. But generally, the first settlement offer is not very good. It is the other side's wish list of what they hope could happen. Usually, it's better than they would get in court. What we advise people to do, and what we do is we sit down with our clients and we say, okay, we're going to run a cost-benefit analysis of this. It costs X number of dollars to take this case all the way to trial and attorney's fees. That is a part of the divorce process. What your spouse is asking for is X percentage above what he or she will likely receive in court. So we can quickly start putting a dollar value to the separation agreement compared to what would likely happen in court, plus the cost of litigating process in court, and say, is this a good deal or is this not a good deal? What we frequently see is it's not a good deal. One spouse will ask for way too much in child support or spousal support, or ask for way too much of the division of marital assets, or to keep a retirement account that they have no right to keep 100% of, or some custody and visitation schedule that is just not in the other parent's favor. But the client will want to avoid litigation so much that they'll be wanting to take that deal. And we have to try to get them to see the reason of the cost-benefit analysis and make a counteroffer. If you get a counteroffer at the other side's wish list, one of the best things to do is to come back and say, okay, this is the best outcome I would actually have in court, and make that as a counteroffer, because at least that's realistic. From there, you hope to be able to negotiate down to what is a fair outcome. Most attorneys know what's going to happen in court, and most attorneys will advise their client of exactly what is going to happen in court. So the clients are well aware. If you go to court, generally things are going to be split. The marital share of assets are going to be split fairly equally. So knowing that, you don't want to spend more avoiding court. A good example is, we had a client that was willing to pay much more in spousal support in order to avoid going to court. The amount that he was willing to pay in spousal support came out to be a total over $100,000 more than what he would have had to pay if he went to court, which was way more than we would have ever charged to go to court, by tenfold. He would have saved almost $90,000 to go to trial, but he was so against going to trial that he was willing to pay that money. And a lot of it was the unknown. No matter how much we advised him, no matter how much we told him about the process, it was the unknown of going to trial. So when you're going through this process, remember, everything can be broken down to a cost-benefit analysis. Are you going to avoid spending more than you're saving? Are you going to save more than you're going to avoid spending? That is the question. Almost every issue in a divorce can be broken down that way. The only one is time with your children. It is impossible to put a cost-benefit analysis to time with the children unless you start trying to get over the joint custody child support calculator where your child support lowers. But generally, when you talk about time with your children, it's a non-quantifiable thing. So you look at it, you say, how much time can I spend with my children? And you negotiate from there. These are just a few of the mistakes that we see very common in the divorce process. What we always try to do is walk our clients through these mistakes, make sure to avoid them. If our clients come in after having made these mistakes, we help them mitigate the damage that these mistakes could actually cost them. Sometimes the answer is you need to move back into the marital home. Sometimes the answer is you don't need a divorce attorney right now. You're not headed towards divorce. You're having a fight. Sometimes the answer is we need to go all the way to trial and fight this to the very end in order to make sure that we protect you. The attorneys at Melone Hatley Law are very experienced in this process. Not only do we help our clients make the right decisions, but we make sure that they get the best outcome possible in court. So if you're going through this process or know that anybody that is, please have them reach out so that we can try to help them through this process and help them avoid these mistakes as well.